So when I talk about artificial intelligence today, I'm going to talk about actual analytical techniques, right? Things that we can actually use. I'm not talking pie in the sky. I'm not talking about the fake AI button under our desks or just this kind of large notion of AI. I'm talking about analytical techniques that are AI driven. And I'm really excited about that because they're accessible and real and practical. When it comes to experiences, I want to use that word more because I think that's what we're doing here as B2B marketers, right? We're really trying to get folks to take an action, right? And we have to provide them the right experiences to do that. And the right experiences for you aren't necessarily the right experiences for me. We're different, right? B2C marketers have kind of known this for a long time. I'm not going to keep going over the trope of B2C versus B2B. It will come up a number of times because it's relevant, but I get it. We've heard it. We know it. So I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum. And finally, persuasion. I love this word because we want to use words like selling, and the word selling isn't wrong, and the word selling is the point. But what we're doing day to day as marketers and salespeople is trying to get you to do the next thing to continue to be engaged with us. Because if we lose you anywhere along the very long, complicated, nonlinear path that you take as a B2B buyer, we've lost you forever. And when we want you to convert, we're trying to persuade you. When we want you to buy, we're trying to persuade you. Advocate, retain, be loyal, all of those things. So artificial intelligence, experience, and persuasion. Sound cool? So these are themes that we will go through. I'm going to go fairly fast. One, I've put a lot in here. And two, it is the last session. So I imagine it's not really a problem for any of you if we finish a minute or two early. So we'll see what we can do. But we're going to think about what we need from tech. AI tech or non-AI tech, we're going to revisit what we're trying to do here. Right? I think that's worthwhile. Things like experiences and persuasion are in that category. We're going to think about those techniques that are useful and practical. And then, of course, we're going to talk about empathy as promise. We're going to talk about the emotional quotient. We're going to talk about why just because we can do something with tech, of course, doesn't mean that we should do something with tech. That really, as we think about the difference between intrusion and personalization, those are two very different things for different people. And it takes empathy to understand that, not necessarily tech. So I'm not disciplined enough for an agenda, right? But these are themes, and we'll go fluidly among them. But we will start at the top and say, what do we need tech for? So this curious image is something that represents what Forrester calls the age of the customer. And all it means is this, that there is an unbalanced tipped scale. On one side is us, that's us in that building. And on the other side is the happy customer. And the customer isn't really happy just because they get amazing experiences from us, because they don't. We're customers as well, so we know that's not always true. But they're happy because they're really connected, right, just from this thing. They're connected because they get to come to conferences like this and ask peers about things. They're connected because they have Quora and LinkedIn and Google. And they're wildly, wildly connected. And that puts everything in their favor. And if this sounds like, I get it, I get it, they're in charge, that's fine. Think about what we've invested in those buildings to get to know them. Millions of dollars in data centers, programs, applications on top of integrations. Also, they can pick up the phone and just get to know us faster than we can get to know them. And it's a very wide gap. And we do a lot of things to try to close this gap. We run surveys, we ask people what they think. And hopefully we do all those things not so much as an academic exercise, but rather to try to appeal to that person with more relevance than otherwise. So let's talk about AI. Again, we're going to talk about very pragmatic things here. Right? I know that AI has a reputation of being mechanical and cold. Even I will refer to it throughout these 30 minutes as the machine. So I'm going to try to convince you that even though it's associated with coldness and mechanics and even job loss and automation, that AI can help us in ways that might feel counterintuitive. That it can help us uncover something very, very human. And the way we'll do that is we'll take AI down a notch. Again, not that AI button under your seat, non-existent AI button, the AI powerful thing, but rather the building blocks of AI, some of those techniques. We'll look to techniques like speech analytics, text analytics, natural language processing, sentiment analysis, and things of that nature that will give us visibility, maximum visibility, into dormant and unstructured data that we've ignored for a very long time, that we haven't given the opportunity to tell us what it knows. But this is when folks are most honest with us in some of these situations, as we'll explore. Seth Godin, who I very much admire, talks about using more eyes, developing more eyes. He also encourages us to do that with empathy, and I'm so glad he does because we don't always remember. The way that we'll find those more eyes in the context of this talk today is AI-driven analytical techniques. We'll look to raw materials to find them, right? Raw materials like things like sales call transcripts or emails exchanged before a call, before a sale, or emails exchanged post-sale, emails exchanged for upsell, conversations captured in customer service calls, conversations captured in upsell calls, survey feedback that's unstructured, thank you surveys that's unstructured, right? They're not drop-downs. We don't just get to say, hey, CRM, tell me what I want to know about this. We can't find it. It's unstructured. It goes dormant. And I know we sort of try to make up for some of this with surveys, but surveys have become a bit of a punchline. This is a really, really brilliant cartoon by the Marketunist, who I admire a lot as well. And I want to tell you that after this conference, I just feel like I should say this, you'll probably be surveyed about your experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not telling you that there's the end of surveys here or that I'm against surveys. I think they're fairly shallow methods for deep insights is all, right? The type of insights that we need to bring more relevance to our customers. So we need to do better. Some of us have to do better because of our competitive environments, right, just to survive. Competitors are giving more relevant experiences to customers that we want. Some of us just have to do better to thrive, right, to treat humans like humans to thrive. We need to listen in ways that are respectful and welcome, and then we need to respond to them in ways that reflect our humanity and empathy. And we can do all of that if we lean into the more unabashed signals that customers give us so that we can apply our own empathy and we can appeal to various emotions. Empathy, because every customer has a context, right? I don't want you to go, think this is too soft. Empathy is simply me saying, I don't want to give you a generic, empty experience. I want to give you an experience that reflects something about what's happening around you. I want that insight so I can treat you more like a human. I don't want to treat you like a target or a profile. It's not empathetic. We talk about engagement because, again, and we'll say this a few times today, you've probably heard about a lot about this at this conference. What is B2b? It's a nonlinear, complex sales cycle. It involves a whole lot of heads with opinions. It's long. There's a whole lot of conversions along the way. We need to continuously engage. Again, we lose them once, we lose them. We may feel good about the concept of the funnel. We might challenge the concept of the funnel. But the fact is, we attract a whole lot of people, and a few people buy from us out of that whole. That's still true. So engagement matters. And we can't really do this with the insights we have now, right? Treating people like people, being relevant, sharing experiences that are very specific to them, because we're generally working with raw materials that look like these. And these things don't even come close to capturing a customer's context. I know that, not only because I play the part of being in that building as a marketer, but also because I'm that big smiley face on the other side. I'm a customer. And when I'm approached with experiences that are designed to appeal to me as a person who works at a mid-sized tech company in the Northeast, I don't feel particularly validated or affirmed or cared about or considered. Right? If you got an email before this conference or another that said, hey, we're going to be there too, come to the booth, you probably felt like you were on a list. And it's really hard to get to know customers in a different way. But this is more about what they're really feeling and what they're doing. These are emotional concepts. As a B2B buyer, we put a whole lot on the line to recommend you to peers, to say that we were good negotiators, to say that we got a good deal, to say that this This vendor will work with us, solve our problems, and just generally be good. We had a role in selecting them. We somewhat put our reputations on the line, so it's a pretty big deal. So we need to turn to our emotional quotient. We have to really start treating people like people. And when we do that, we know that we're doing it to engage. Again, we know that we need to give people good experiences so that they'll convert. We need to show value in our relationships so that people will be retained. We need to show incredible value for people to advocate. And this often seems like the analytics game and insights game. It seems like a data game and a numbers game and a one side of the brain game. I can never keep them straight. And it is all of those things. But nailing all of that on the back end, conducting those analytics so that we understand a bit more about good segments, right, that aren't made up of demographics, but are made up of other indicators that are more relevant to the buyer. This requires empathy. That's not a numbers game. That's a nuanced, intellectual activity. So we want to think a whole lot more about that. So what is the machine good at? We'll talk about what the machine is good at. But let's not deny what we're good at. We're good at being people. Hopefully understanding how to persuade people. Developing skills that say, I will capitalize on this knowledge to persuade you to do one thing or the other. Not in a manipulative way. Not in an evil way. In a way that says, I'd much rather treat you more like the human you are than like the segments I created 5 years ago. And to do that, we have to have some sense of what will appeal to someone, what will trigger a response. So this is a very simple slide of 3 different types of cars. And my bet is, the bet of many advertisers and the bet of many marketers, is that one of them is more appealing to you than the others. You have a sense of speed and general coolness, I don't know. You have a sense of adventure, or you're somewhat quirky. And one of these things is more appealing to you than the other. And if this seems underwhelming, I don't disagree with you. But what I'll ask you to imagine with me is the power we have if we can change small inputs like this along a customer journey at all of those various conversions and decision points. When it's the right time to appeal to emotion, when it's the right time to bring out what that trigger might be, so that we can further engage, so that we can sustain a dialogue. So let's explore our AI avenues, because one, we've determined that B2B buyers bring their emotions to the table, that we all do. And I mean every single time. Again, it's not sale or no sale. It's every conversion, every interaction. Am I picking up the phone? Am I clicking because of the subject line? All of those things. And then we also know that we can't necessarily hear those signals, the objections in those moments, the signals of support in those moments. Those are difficult for us to hear. So let's look at the avenues. So getting back to empathy, the difference, again, top of the value chain, the difference between generic one-size-fits-all experiences and those that are tailored for a person. Machine learning and rules-based techniques to unearth sentiment. This is about those raw materials that I talked about earlier. This is about the conversations that we've had that no one paid attention to. If we use machine learning and rules-based techniques, we can get into those raw data, dormant data, past conversations, things that have been shelved, things that live in the database but that we can't query, and understand trends. What are some of the language? What are some of the pieces of language that individuals used before they churned? Even better, what is some of the language that individuals in a segment that looks like this, what's some of the language that they used before they churned, before they left, or before they signed a contract? Speech and text analytics to interpret in-moment sentiment. There are a lot of companies right now that are doing really great things. One of them is Beyond Verbal. And they happen to work with a company called Frontline Selling. And what they do is the technology is present during every call. And in the moment, the agent gets notifications that say things like, go slower, or go faster. This person's sense of urgency is something you're not matching, so go faster. Or you sound irritated. you're showing your anger. Just ways to show that there's a context on the other line and we need to respect it. And to respect it, we actually need to capture it. And humans aren't always perfect at that. The technology helps. There are linguistic patterns that we don't always hear. And it's really great to have the tech that does. And then AI-powered conversational bots. Right? How can these be empathetic? Well, one, imagine a bot that welcomes you as soon as you get to a website. It says, "Hi, may I help you?" What do you read when you see that? You read, "How can I get you to sales?" Say price, say price, say price. But what about a bot instead that appeared when you were on a features page and just asked a helpful question? Just helped you get through digital stop signs, forms, and things like that, and just helped you buy. Help a buyer's buy. It's the same tech. It's almost the same moment. It is a wildly different experience. Finally, engagement, elevating conversations. I always say that a B2B purchase is not a journey from a Google search to a buy button. Right? That would be great. So again, the sustenance, sustaining the relationship along the way. So what can we do with AI to help that? One is dynamic segmentation. The way that we create audiences right now is generally static, right? We're using things like industry, geography, things that I showed before, title, demographics. AI gives us this new technology, this machine learning technology that clusters audiences by things that they have in common, that they might care about more than their former graphics or the size of their company. It's really the next level of audience creation. Intelligent attribution. A lot of us think about attribution as a backwards-looking function, right? We get to say, hey, I want to assign some revenue to some conversions that happened, some touch points. I'll use one model, it will be great. But what attribution is doing, in particular intelligent attribution with AI-driven tech, is helping you understand the intersection of four very important things: buy cycle, persona, content, and channel. That is the recipe for next best experience. There is no ability for any of us here, AI or not, to build the next best experience in any automated way without that information. That's intelligent attribution. And then natural language processing to manage potential risk and churn. If I were to tell you rather, I had a list of 500 companies in your database that are about to churn. The next logical question is, what are you going to do about it? I've given you the 500 companies, right? I hear this from a lot of people. We want predictive so that we know who's going to churn. Great, here it is. What will you do? The answer is it depends. It depends. What is the driver of their satisfaction or frustration? What am I supposed to do? What is their reason for churn? Those reasons aren't searchable. Those reasons aren't in fields. Those reasons aren't in queries. Someone knows them. Hopefully someone has documented them. But they've likely had interactions with you where they expressed that. We didn't have the tools to listen. But these techniques are the tools to listen. And finally, appeal to emotion to influence choices. My perspective here, and it's actually not perspective and it's not my research, someone else, plenty of other people's research, is that emotions drive decision making. Tapping those emotions is a smart thing to do. If this sounds crazy to you by any chance, and I hope it doesn't, but Spotify has been doing this for years. So if you've listened to Spotify, Spotify has very likely put you in a mood-based segment. And you can sort of fluidly move among those segments, but when they sell that data to advertisers, those advertisers know that is very insightful information. And they are more likely to appeal to you with a very specific message when you are in one of a few emotion states of mind. And that's really clever. So this isn't crazy, this is real. So speech analytics again. This is again an opportunity. This is a firm called Mattersight, for example. And they do a very similar thing for customer service calls or sales calls. They monitor, technology monitors, and it says again, there are acoustic changes here. There are changes in tone. You might not be able to hear them, human, but I can. And the last time I heard a change in tone like this from someone in a segment like this, at a buy cycle like this, it didn't go well. I was optimized for an output of make a meeting, and it didn't happen. So this is bad. And what I've learned from machine learning, as the machine, is that a good way to respond is to slow down and say something like this. Now, we all know we've got folks like SDRs, BDRs, whatever you call them, and folks in customer service who need this kind of support, often not the most experienced of our staff, often not the most supported of our staff, but critically important folks who often have the first interaction with folks that you've deemed qualified. And then chatbots. Again, just increasingly able to detect opportunities for more empathy and change the language that they use with AI-driven tech in a particular moment. Again, in-moment recognition of a mood or a personality. And finally, intelligent recommendations. So when we think about intelligent recommendations, typically we think about, good, get me some of that. I would love to get people to my high-value page. I would love to use an intelligent recommendation to get folks to my price page, or my conversion page, or my trial page, my free demo page. But a more empathetic recommendation engine simply, again, helps a buyer buy. And if you are on a features page, it may help you build a requirements document if that's the stage that you're in. If you show signs of being in market otherwise, it may help you buy. But it's going to help the buyer do what the buyer came to do, rather than send them on a journey that's going to be, that's going to be jarring for them. So the thing is, those were 9 examples of AI tech doing what I think is pretty cool stuff, doing things to enhance our ability to behave empathetically and treat our customers with more empathy and take advantage of the fact that decisions are emotional. But they were also optimized for very specific things. And I mentioned the AI button now 3 times, and I won't do it again. But there is this notion that AI optimizes for things like make more money or things like customer satisfaction. But AI doesn't do that. It excels at discrete tasks. You do that. That is still your responsibility. AI is going to bring you insights that will increase your customer acumen. It will do that if you let it. But it's human muscle that responds to that acumen with empathy. It is right now, and it will be for a very long time. So merge human and machine insight for better customer experiences. Again, rely on you, rely on your sense of how to provide an empathetic experience. So there are 3 takeaways here that I'd like to walk through. 1, I want to be clear, especially in the context of artificial intelligence. I am not here to tell you an efficiency story. There are other stories about AI that are efficiency stories. Scale, automation, great words. This one requires the analysis of data, access to more data, but the analysis of that data. Sometimes you'll get pieces to cobble together. This is a heavily intellectual task to create a nuanced conversation from cobbled pieces of data. It is worth it, but it is not an efficiency story. It's not a scale story right now. It absolutely will be, but it just isn't today. It is a story about value proposition. Here's what we've been doing for a long time, myself guilty. We've been taking our value proposition and spreading it over the world. This really turns that on its head, and it says, let's understand what our customers value first and create experiences based on those perceptions of value. That is a new thing. That is knowing your audience first, not developing an experience and then building your audience in whatever marketing automation platform you have. It is value proposition second, audience and trust first. And that's new. It's a story about skills and talent, as it always is. I know that lots of you have gotten guidance about building data and analytics capabilities on your team, and I wouldn't take that back. I may have given you that advice, and I wouldn't take it back. You need that. But be sure to balance that with the other pieces, the storytelling pieces, the pieces that understand how to translate a value proposition for a specific perception of value. And otherwise, we have insights with no action. And insights with no action is an academic exercise and a waste of money. So you'll hear a lot about modern marketing at this conference, which is close to being over, don't get me wrong, and of course in the coming days and weeks and months and years. So know that as far as I'm concerned, and I'll close by saying this, modern marketing is just this. It's being empathetic, treating our customers like human, understanding when we need to use tech and when it needs to be AI, and employing that for the customer experience to Persuade. With that, I thank you so very much for your time. Thank you so much for joining me on day 2.